Chapter 35:18. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Sither Life Core Realm was the third step of the immortal path. Even in the universe, one was qualified to be called an expert. Now, 13 Life Core Realm experts had entered the capital together. Were they going to fight Chen Fengyang head-on? Ling Han only smiled when he heard this. Chen Fengyang was a perfected lord of the spirit transformation realm and a prince of the previous dynasty. He definitely had many treasured skills. Therefore, he was definitely stronger than an ordinary perfected lord of the same level. 13 Life Core Realm experts were probably not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. However, the outside world only evaluated Chen Fengyang as a Life Core Realm expert. Therefore, to the people in the cage, 13 Life Core Realm experts were naturally enough to suppress Chen Fengyang. Such existences were too powerful. Ling Han could not control them at all. Therefore, he did not take it to heart. Even if the sky collapsed, there would always be someone strong enough to support it. He only needed to take care of his own affairs. However, once these 13 experts entered the capital, they pointed their spear at the Department of External Affairs. They asked Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao to immediately pay them a visit. Damn. Ling Han felt gloomy. Why was it that when those elites wanted to demonstrate their might, they just had to target him? It was the same in the past. They wanted to force him to hand over the inheritance of the young dragon. Although they were targeting the Department of External Affairs now, he was the palace master. How could he escape? Even if I use all my trump cards, I still can't fight against a Life Core Realm expert. Therefore, I can only hope that nephew Gu has some tricks up his sleeves or that he will come personally. But, can I go have some fun tonight? Ling Han thought of the void beast skin. It could make him invisible. Together with the broken stone tablet, could he knock out a few Life Core Realm experts? He was excited. Life Core Realm experts should have some good stuff. For safety reasons, he did not act immediately. Instead, he asked Sixth Baby if the void beast skin could defend against the divine senses of Life Core Realm experts. Father, stop dreaming. Sixth Baby shook his head. After stepping into the celestial path, the essence of life changes and is reborn. You won't be able to hide from the Foundation Establishment realm, let alone the Life Core realm. Ling Han sighed. It was such a pity. He still wanted to make a fortune. As the news spread out, everyone's eyes were fixed on the External Affairs Department. Everyone knew that it was impossible for Ling Han to block 13 Life Core Realm warriors. He couldn't even block half of them. Therefore, in order to resolve this crisis, Chen Fengyang had to do it himself. The situation was very clear. If Chen Fengyang didn't dare to make a move, it meant that he knew he was no match for Ling Han. Then, Ling Han would become a pitiful cannon fodder. He couldn't let 13 Life Core warriors come here for nothing. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. Some believed that Chen Fengyang was invincible and would definitely make a move. The only reason he hadn't said anything yet was because he had the breadth of mind to accommodate the world. He was giving these 13 people one last chance. However, there were also people who thought that Chen Fengyang didn't dare to make a move. He was only at the Life Core realm. How could he fight against 13 people by himself? Things would eventually come to an end. The next day, 13 Life Core stage powerhouses arrived at the Department of External Affairs. When Ling Han walked out, he saw 13 people standing outside. Each of them emitted an aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth. They were indescribably powerful. Upon closer inspection, their feet were not standing on the ground. Instead, they were treading on the air. Their snow-white cloth shoes were spotless. After stepping onto the path of immortality, a martial artist would have the ability to fly. However, foundation building cultivators had to use tools to fly. Although cast cauldrons could fly straight, they had to maintain a high-speed flying state in order to stay afloat. Only Life Core Realm warriors could fuse with the laws of heaven and earth. They could tread on energy that mortals couldn't see and float in the air. Therefore, these 13 people were obviously Life Core Realm warriors. There was no need to doubt them. Greetings, seniors. Ling Han cupped his fists and greeted these 13 people who were so powerful that they could kill him with a single breath. Mortal, How dare you not kneel in front of us? A life core realm warrior said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was full of pressure. Ling Han felt a splitting headache. He wiped his face and saw that it was covered in blood. The life core realm was too scary. Just a sentence from them was enough to make him bleed. The difference was as big as the sky. Behind Ling Han, Shenyuan Dingguo, Hu and the others were all present. They were from the External Affairs Palace and couldn't stay out of this. Many people ran over to watch the show. The third prince and the others all sneered. Previously, they had tried to arrange people in the External Affairs Palace, but Ling Han didn't give them any face and directly rejected them. This was the Chen family's world. Who did he think he was? Now, 13 Life Core Realm warriors pointed their swords at the External Affairs Palace. Let's see how Ling Han would resolve this. Ling Han smiled faintly. Junior's bones are a bit hard. I can't kneel. A white-haired Life Core Realm warrior couldn't help but laugh. He then turned to look at his companion and said, Brother Li, we haven't appeared for too long. Could it be that people have forgotten the power of the Life Core Realm? It was an old man dressed in green. He also smiled. Then let the world remember how terrifying the Life Core Realm is today. He stretched out his hands. Kwong, the sky was instantly covered by a dense layer of clouds. Thunder and lightning covered the whole imperial city, as if the end of the world had arrived. This hand could control heaven and earth. How powerful was it? Kwong, bolts of lightning struck down and interweaved around his body. It made the green-robed old man look like a god walking in the mortal world. He was supreme. The green-robed old man walked in the air step by step. It was as if there was an invisible flight of stairs. He rose into the air step by step and floated hundreds of meters in the air. Kwong, 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 the lightning that filled the sky seemed to have found a target, and they all shot toward him. But the old man only stretched out his hand and waved. All the lightning was grasped in his hand and transformed into a huge lightning spear. Could a mortal use lightning as a spear? Of course it was wishful thinking. Pa, pa, pa. Many people immediately knelt down and kowtowed to the green-robed old man who was like a god in the sky. Mortal, this is the power of a god, the green-robed old man said. His voice rumbled as if the heavens were passing down a decree. If he wanted to subdue Ling Han, there was naturally no need to be so exaggerated. But the green-robed old man's group had come to seize Xianbei country, so they naturally had to display a miracle to win the hearts of the people. This was a type of great momentum, a type of destiny. To seize a country, one had to seize destiny first. Ling Han didn't kneel. It was just as he said. His bones were hard and he couldn't kneel. Little ant, you still dare to stand? The green-robed old man said indifferently. It was as if a god was issuing a decree. Mortals could only obey. Ling Han smiled faintly. Old man, don't show off too much. Be careful or you'll be struck by lightning. The green-robed old man almost fell from the sky. How powerful was he? He was the one who summoned the lightning, so how could he be struck by lightning? This brat really was audacious. He still dared to argue with him even at this time. It looks like you don't want to live anymore, the green-robed old man said. He reached out and grabbed at Ling Han. Hong, it was as if the heavens were furious and sent down a punishment. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 3520. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC in the sky, the Life Core Realm cultivators were fighting. Every one of them was like a god, drawing upon the boundless power of heaven and earth to attack each other. Every one of them emitted dazzling light that people could only look up to. However, even such a powerhouse was controlled by the intense resentment and was fighting a pointless battle. Below, the mortals were also fighting, creating a huge mess. Fortunately, when the lightning and thunder roared, most people were so scared that they hid in their houses. Other than being drenched by the rain, the rabbits were considered to have escaped the calamity. In other words, those who were fighting here were basically here to watch the show. For example, the third prince, the fifth prince, and so on, all of them opened their deathly pale eyes and started a crazy attack on their brothers and subordinates. Ling Han did not make a move, he only guarded the External Affairs Department. After being possessed by the resentful spirit, a martial artist's body would become completely unafraid of attacks, but afterwards, they would become extremely weak and their strength would be greatly reduced. Half a day later, the battles finally became sparse, and the battles of the life core realm also stopped. Even in such an intense battle, none of them were injured. However, after the resentful spirit disappeared, their expressions changed drastically. Their terrifying auras suddenly vanished like smoke in thin air, and they fell to the ground one after another, some even vomiting blood. Previously, they had suffered so many attacks but were not injured in the slightest. This was not because they were hit by dogs, but because they accumulated in a special way, and after the resentful spirit disappeared, they all returned the damage. So what if they were in the life core realm? This was a huge injury. The 13 life core realm cultivators were like ordinary people, lying on the ground with constipated expressions. Previously, they crazily fought against each other, even taking out the immortal path foundation stone and the spirit-nurturing immortal cauldron. Now, they all discovered that their immortal path foundation stone and immortal cauldron had cracks on them. This was *King huge loss. If they wanted to repair the immortal path foundation stone and immortal cauldron, it would take at least a few hundred years if they only relied on their bodies to slowly recover. Although a life core realm cultivator could live for about 4,000 years, they were not born in a cage, but a group of people who were imprisoned at the beginning. They had spent more than 2,000 years in a cage. How many years did they have left to live? A few hundred years, that was the rest of their lives. Or they could acquire an extremely valuable medicine to recreate the foundation of the immortal path and the cauldron. But acquiring such medicine was far more difficult than that. They had come to the imperial capital with the intention of forcing Chen Fengyang to step down from the stage. But now, before they could even see the other party's face, they had suffered such a blow to the head. How could they endure this? This transaction was really a huge loss. Let's go. The green-robed old man crawled up and immediately turned to run. The other life core warriors also followed after him. They were now seriously injured, and their battle strength might be barely enough to cast a cauldron. How could they be a match for a life core warrior? If they didn't leave now, wouldn't they be waiting to be captured by Chen Fengyang in one fell swoop? Who would have thought that the 13 life core stage experts, who had come aggressively, would actually run away with their tails between their legs so quickly? Long live the sage emperor! The citizens of the imperial capital began to shout. In fact, this had nothing to do with Chen Fengyang at all. With his miraculous methods, everyone naturally attributed the blood rain to Chen Fengyang. Ling Han looked at the third prince and the others, only to see that their expressions were also dispirited, as if they had been seriously injured. He smiled. Who asked you to come and see me make a fool of myself? Now you're out of luck. Serves you right. The 13 life core warriors had invaded the imperial capital, but no one had expected the outcome to be resolved. It was full of strangeness and drama. This was their own doing. The life core warriors had wanted to show off their might, but in the end, they had dug their own graves. Precisely because they had not expected it, the outside powers also believed that Chen Fengyang had secretly acted and tricked the 13 life core warriors. This also proved that Chen Fengyang should be at the life core realm. Hence, he did not dare to face so many life core warriors head-on, and could only use special methods. The tragedy was right in front of them. For a moment, no power dared to have any ideas about the imperial capital, but many young martial artists ran over. Some experts said that the imperial capital's location was too wonderful. It was a place where dragons soared, and one could obtain great luck here. Why did those life core warriors insist on occupying the imperial capital? It was because they fancied the luck of the imperial capital. Tian Kai took half a month to recover, but he was only stained with a few drops of the blood rain. Moreover, during the battle, Hua tried his best to avoid hitting him, but even so, he still suffered a great loss. It could be seen how poisonous the blood rain was. What was this? Cursed vengeful spirit? Ling Han had never encountered such things in the Yuan world. As long as one's soul was destroyed, one would die. There was no such thing as a ghost. However, he had seen it with his own eyes, so it could only be explained as a ghost. Well, this was not the Yuan world after all. so it was normal for things to be different. Ling Han thought of the broken stone tablet. Monkey King said that it was a part of the tombstone, and it was surrounded by yin qi, which was very inauspicious. After he patted it, everything went wrong for Hong Tian Bu. The power of vengeful spirit was so great. He had to be careful not to fall into the same trap. After all, in the battle 2,000 years ago, too many people had died, and there were many ghosts who were unwilling to die. After the blood rain, the royal family invited many monks to chant sutras in the imperial capital to perform expiation. It was not until more than 10 days later that illusory figures could be seen rising from every corner, flying into the air before gradually disappearing. These figures were all wearing simple clothes, and they were very similar to the vengeful spirits from before. However, there was no soaring resentment now, only peace. Ling Han was surprised that vengeful spirits could actually be purified. He suddenly became very interested in these monks, and immediately tried to understand them. He didn't expect the Calabash brothers to know everything, and they immediately started talking at once. They are called the Buddhist race. Eldest baby said, a long time ago, the Buddhist race had an ancestor king who was invincible for an era. He established the foundation of the Buddhist race, and it has been evergreen for thousands of years. Even now, it has a great influence. Those Baldies cultivate to purify evil, and by purifying a person, they can obtain merit, third baby said, his small face full of disdain. Merit, Ling Han said. Merit is about the same as the power of fire and smoke. Aya, Dad, your cultivation level is too low now. It's too tiring to tell you this, and you don't understand. Second baby waved his hand. All right, he was looked down upon for his low cultivation level. After the resentment was resolved, the imperial capital once again returned to peace, but this kind of peace definitely wouldn't last long. A great era of change was rolling in, and peace was really a luxury. As expected, not long after, the imperial capital was shaken again. A group of young people entered the imperial capital. Although none of them had stepped into the celestial path, their origins were shocking. Because their elders were still in the cage. Even life core tier elites had escaped, and were still in the cage now. What did that mean? Their elders were great elites of the true self tier, or even the spirit transformation tier. The spiritual infant tier was changed to the true self tier. I've written it too muddled, and forgot that there was already a spiritual infant tier in the past. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 35-21. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Cease soon, more news came. This group of young people was led by two people. One of them was called Jin Yulu, a woman as beautiful as a fairy. Her martial arts talent was also extremely shocking. She was said to be able to sweep away her peers at the same level. She was at the peak of the immortal path with the cultivation of the mystery realm. The other was called Lu Haiyuan. He was also a genius in martial art, but his cultivation was slightly weaker. He was at the enlightening realm. Both of them were disciples of a perfected Lord spiritualization. They were the representatives of this super expert, but they didn't say what they were going to do. Apart from these two, the other young people were also extraordinary, but they didn't have as great a background as these two. So even if there was a mystic-seeking realm, they were still the leaders. These people entered the capital in a very high-profile manner. In an instant, it was as crowded as a marketplace. Perfected Lord spiritualization was so high up. Chen Fengyang was also only at the life core realm. He was nothing in front of a spirit transformation realm. Clearly, perfected Lord spiritualization would definitely rule the capital in the future. If they could get close to him now, it would definitely be beneficial in the future. Of course, no one dared to be too obvious. After all, Chen Fengyang was the emperor now. Perfected Lord spiritualization hadn't been born yet. Before they could get close to him, Chen Fengyang would sentence them to death for treason. Ling Han had Shenyuan Dinghua investigate. Among them, senior tutor Hong was the most active. He would go there almost every other day. Ling Han, I've decided to pursue Jin Yulu, Shenyuan Dinghua said, his face determined. Ling Han sighed, and said, I remember that you said it resolutely and decisively, that you wanted to pursue the demon princess. You still say that? Shenyuan Dinggua's face was full of hidden bitterness. You're already together with her. How can I tear my brother's corner? Ling Han was surprised. You think too highly of yourself. What makes you think that without me, the demon princess would fall in love? Shenyuan, I'm impressed by how thick your skin is. He patted Shenyuan Dinggua's shoulder. Hee. Shenyuan Dinggua didn't blush in the slightest. He was indeed thick-skinned. A few days later, Jin Yulu announced that she would hold a martial art festival and invite the younger generation to attend. Those who performed outstandingly would be introduced to her and Lu Haiyuan by their master and become the direct disciples of perfected spirit transformation. When this news spread out, the entire imperial capital was not in an uproar, but went crazy. How high was the spirit transformation realm? If he could become the disciple of such a powerful person, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the future? So what if he was an expert of the immortal path? He still had to be respectful. Now, everyone was proud to get an invitation from Jin Yulu, and the topic of the meeting was about the martial art grand festival. Ling Han didn't care at all. Why perfected Lord Spirit Transformation was his nephew, and the sect Master Almighty was his sworn brother. Why would he care about being accepted as a disciple by perfected Lord Spirit Transformation? Wasn't this lowering his own status? He didn't care, but Shenyuan Dinggua and the others cried out for injustice on Ling Han's behalf. Shenyuan Dinggua and Hua had all received an invitation, but he, one of the two prides of the imperial capital and the head of the external affairs house, didn't receive one. Wasn't this obvious? Not only him, but even Princess Bai Xiao didn't receive an invitation. The two heads of the external affairs house were both ignored. Clearly, Jin Yulu had done this on purpose. What was she trying to convey? She didn't want people that Chen Fengyang valued. Although she didn't do it openly, the meaning was already very clear. A day later, Princess Bai Xiao quietly returned. In order to break through to the immortal path, she had previously left the imperial capital to avoid being disturbed, so she didn't stay in the external affairs house. Ling Han looked at her and said with a smile, "You've broken through." Princess Bai Xiao snorted and suddenly reached out. "Pa," she grabbed Ling Han's neck. "That's right. Your absolute fairness is now ineffective against me. You can no longer threaten me. Are you trying to murder your husband?" Ling Han said with difficulty. His neck was being gripped very hard. "You still dare to speak nonsense?" Princess Bai Xiao's eyes became fierce. Ling Han just smiled. If he didn't feel that Princess Bai Xiao didn't have any killing intent, he would definitely have picked up the broken stone tablet and hit her. Princess Bai Xiao retracted her hand. "You really don't change." Ling Han rubbed his neck. "I say, my dear Bai Xiao, you really used a lot of strength. You almost succeeded in murdering me." Princess Bai Xiao was speechless. Why couldn't this guy change his bad habit of being talkative? She sighed and decisively didn't waste her breath in this area. She said, "Did anything big happen these few days?" Nothing. You just missed a dozen life core realm cultivators who joined forces to sweep through our external affairs house. In the end, the sky rained blood and scared them all away. Also, perfected Lord Spirit Transformation's disciple entered the imperial capital. In 2 days, there will be a martial art grand festival. Outstanding talents will be selected and recommended to that Spirit Transformation realm cultivator as a personal disciple. Ling Han said very casually, as if these two things were insignificant. Princess Bai Xiao was surprised. She didn't expect that the time of her seclusion would be so coincidental. She actually missed such a big thing. "Others received an invitation, but we didn't," she murmured. "This is deliberately making fun of His Majesty." Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "If we still don't receive an invitation, we can only go without an invitation." Princess Bai Xiao was puzzled and said, "Aren't you going to be a joke?" "What joke?" Ling Han said with a smile, "We are the external affairs house. Those people are under our control. Did they get our permission to enter the imperial capital?" "They entered the imperial capital without permission and even held a banquet. Do they think we don't exist?" "That's fine too." Princess Bai Xiao thought for a moment. Indeed, Wasn't the External Affairs House in charge of those people who were released from the imprisoned pets? If you don't send an invitation and want to use this opportunity to make fun of the External Affairs House and Chen Fengyang, we will make it so that you can't even hold a banquet. Let's see who will be humiliated. You really are a scammer, she said. What nonsense are you talking about? Ling Han said with a smile. After getting along for so long, he realized that Princess Bai Xiao was still worth making friends with. Another day passed. Jin Yulu still didn't send an invitation to Ling Han or Princess Bai Xiao. Her intention to deliberately hang them out was already obvious. Many people were watching. Could it be that Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao were going to swallow this insult? The two of them were personally appointed by Chen Fengyang. If they swallowed this insult, it would naturally mean that Chen Fengyang had lost this battle. However, the problem was, who dared to touch the disciple of perfected Lord Spirit transformation? It seemed that Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao had to swallow this humiliation. One day later, it was the day that Jin Yulu would hold the martial art festival. The time was set for noon. Early in the morning, someone arrived at the place in advance. It seemed that he wanted to show his face and win the favor of others. As noon approached, more and more people arrived. Among them, there was no lack of distinguished guests at the prince level. Young Master Hong of Hongtian Bu has arrived. There was a person at the door. It was a loud and extremely loud voice. Swoosh. Jin Yulu immediately stood up and went to the door. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 35-22. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. Everyone was shocked when they saw the situation. Previously, even when the eldest prince and the seventh prince arrived, she didn't come out to welcome them. She only asked Lu Haiyuan to receive them and put on a great show. Now that Hong Tianbu was here, she actually went to welcome him personally. Hong Tianbu's reputation was so great. The eldest prince and the others had gloomy expressions and felt that they had suffered 10,000 points of damage. However, Jin Yulu's backer was a spirit transformation true monarch. How would they dare to act out? If they knew that their fathers were also true monarchs, they wouldn't be able to hold back and fight. This was the Chen clan's territory. How dare they not give face? It was just that Chen Fengyang was overly low profile and had never revealed his cultivation, causing his sons to be fearful. Was this considered a professional scam? Ling Han could understand that Chen Fengyang had to keep a low profile. Otherwise, if the Azure Dragon Empire knew of his existence, they would definitely send out experts to eliminate him. To cut the weeds, one had to remove the roots. A moment later, Jin Yulu and Hong Tianbu walked over together. The man was handsome, and the woman was absolutely beautiful. They were a perfect match. From Jin Yulu's attitude, it was obvious how much she valued Hong Tianbu. The two of them seemed to be old friends who had known each other for many years. As they walked, they were still whispering to each other. Occasionally, Jin Yulu could be seen giggling and was extremely beautiful, causing many men to stare at her. This woman's beauty wasn't inferior to the demon race's princess, and she had already captured the hearts of many men. It is about time. Let's start the banquet. Jin Yulu sat back on the host seat while Hong Tianbu was arranged to sit at the furthest front seat. It was obvious that she valued him highly. The eldest prince and the others were indignant. What right did a mere subject have to ride on their heads? They didn't dare to complain to Jin Yulu, but Hong Tianbu was a subject of the Chen clan, and they didn't have anything to fear. Hong Tianbu, why didn't you greet this king and the others? The third prince was the first to flip out. He was very unhappy recently as Ling Han didn't give him any face. Now that Hong Tianbu was riding on his head, he couldn't tolerate it anymore. Hong Tianbu let out a faint smile. So it is your highness. Forgive this Hong for not seeing you. Such a lame excuse. The seventh prince also couldn't tolerate it, and he said indifferently, Hong Tianbu, do you think your wings have hardened, and you can look down on everyone? Your highness, why do you say that? Hong Tianbu smiled. How am I arrogant? Hong Tianbu, do you really think that no one can deal with you? The seventh prince fiercely slapped his chair and stood up. Enough! Jin Yulu shouted. She swept her gaze across the crowd and said, Brother Hong is a genius. Even my master has heard of it. He already intends to accept Brother Hong as his direct disciple. She paused for a moment, giving everyone time to digest this heavy news. Then, she said, my master is a true monarch spirit transformation. Even in the universe, he is a peak existence, let alone in this primitive land. What, you want to bully and humiliate my master's disciple? She looked at the princes with an awe-inspiring gaze, exuding an aura of superiority. So what if you are princes? You are nothing in her eyes. All the princes felt aggrieved. They were princes, but now they were being pointed at their noses and scolded. They were just short of being showered with dog blood. But Jin Yulu was different. She was the disciple of true monarch spirit transformation, now was not the same as a year ago. Everyone still thought that the opening aperture realm was the peak of martial art. Who didn't know how high the spirit transformation realm was? Who dared to become enemies with true monarch spirit transformation's disciple? Weren't they afraid that her master would come out and crush them with one finger? Thus, all the princes could only swallow this resentment. They didn't dare to shed all pretense of cordiality. Hong Tian Bu revealed a smile. These idiots wanted to compete with him? His vision had long been set even further. He didn't even care about the other disciples and descendants of true monarch spirit transformation in the cage. His target was the successors of those large sects in the universe. They were the strongest of the younger generation who had the qualifications to be called true sons and saintesses. He wanted to suppress these geniuses and become the strongest of this era. When Jin Yulu's voice fell, many people immediately came forward to toast and curry favor with Hong Tian Bu. This young man was destined to rise. If he was accepted as a disciple by true monarch spirit transformation, achieving life core or even true self in the future would be a piece of cake. In comparison, the prince's side was cold and cheerless. The world was cold. Chen Fengyang hadn't died yet, but there were already many people who couldn't wait to latch onto a new thigh. The young elites who had come with Jin Yulu sneered. They were the vanguard, here to attack the Chen clan's prestige. Why did they dare? Firstly, they had a powerful background. Secondly, they hadn't violated Chen Fengyan's request. They weren't experts of the immortal path, and they hadn't committed murder or arson. Had they broken the law? Reporting. A servant suddenly ran over, panting and panicking. Why are you so flustered? Lu Haiyuan asked unhappily. Ling Han is here. The servant stammered. Ling Han. Lu Haiyuan couldn't help but smile coldly. He had intentionally not sent an invitation to Ling Han in order to make things difficult for him. If he didn't come, it would be equivalent to being a coward. If he did come, what could he do? It would only be more humiliating. A clamor came from the distance. Lu Haiyuan frowned. He saw two people walking side by side, followed by more than 10 people. They all looked like they wanted to stop them but didn't dare. Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao. Lu Haiyuan waved his hand. You may leave. The servants felt as if they had been pardoned. They no longer followed Ling Han, turning to leave. Ling Han, this is private territory. You can't enter unless you're invited, Lu Haiyuan said to Ling Han. But since you've come here shamelessly, then find a place to sit. In any case, I don't mind giving you some food to eat. This was insulting. Ling Han looked at Lu Haiyuan. This brat did look somewhat decent, but he was too stupid. He said, Idiot, do you know that all lands under the heavens belong to the emperor? You people sneaked into the imperial capital. Why didn't you report to the Ministry of External Affairs? Did you think you could get lucky and that I wouldn't investigate? Oh, you could do it like this. Everyone was surprised. They hadn't expected Ling Han to cut in from this angle. Indeed, no matter how powerful Jin Yulu, Lu Haiyuan, and the others were, they had come out of the cage and were under the jurisdiction of the Foreign Affairs Palace. It was just that everyone had been frightened by the true Lord Spirit transformation. Who would have thought of going against them? This way, Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao weren't trespassing. They had reason and evidence. They could even seal this place and chase Jin Yulu and the others out of the imperial capital. The situation was instantly reversed. Lu Haiyuan stared blankly for a moment, then laughed loudly. I've long since heard that you have a sharp tongue. You really do live up to your reputation. However, let alone a mere engravement realm martial artist like you, even if Chen Fengyang came, he would have to be polite to us. Kneel. He suddenly raised his voice. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 35-24. A Beautiful Romance. BQG 6. Cece, what was there to fight? Ling Han seemed to be casually waving his war hammer, but every move was able to restrain Lu Haiyuan. There was not a trace of anger, and it was extremely easy. Everyone was speechless. Lu Haiyuan was the disciple of a spirit transformation expert, and he was also an enlightening realm cultivator. But now, he was being played around by an engravement realm cultivator. Who could believe it? Stop! Jin Yulu shouted. If they continued fighting, Lu Haiyuan would definitely lose, and his loss would not only be a personal loss, but also a loss of face for a spirit transformation expert. Therefore, she had to step forward and stop the fight. Lu Haiyuan retreated, but how could Ling Han let him off so easily? He chased after him. Ling Han, don't be so overbearing. Hong Tian Bu humphed coldly, and struck out with a palm strike. Hong, a powerful force surged over, forcing Ling Han to have no choice but to stop. He was still unable to defeat a secret-seeking expert, and Hong Tian Bu was a 2 or even 3-star genius. His battle strength was far stronger than an ordinary secret-seeking expert. Hong Tian Bu, you dare to obstruct the External Affairs Division? Are you openly committing treason? Ling Han coldly said. He had lost all patience with Hong Tian Bu. Hong Tian Bu sneered, what right do you have to be one of the 2 prides of the imperial capital? From now on, there will only be me, Hong Tian Bu. Jin Yulu also spoke at the right time and said, then let's fight. Whoever wins will be the only prodigy. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. What a joke. A secret-seeking expert wants to challenge me to a showdown. Your cultivation progress is slow, who can you blame? Hong Tian Bu sneered and walked towards Ling Han. Ling Han immediately activated absolute fairness, but a ferocious aura rippled out from Hong Tian Bu's body, shattering the control of absolute fairness and rendering it ineffective. Hong Tian Bu proudly smiled. He had already completely merged with the primordial fierce beast's eye, which was at least a true monarch. How could it be affected by a formation below the immortal path? Ling Han, have you given up all hope? Hong Tian Bu sneered. Hong Tian step. With a delicate shout, Princess Bai Xiao stepped forward and stood in front of Ling Han. So it's Princess Bai Xiao. Hong Tian Bu revealed a smile. He used to admire this demon clan princess, but with the appearance of Jin Yulu, his thoughts changed. This monster princess was not worthy of him. At most, she would be his plaything. Naturally, he didn't need to spend much effort on toys. This is a battle between me and Ling Han to become the #1 prodigy of the imperial capital. It's not appropriate for the princess to interfere, Hong Tianbu said indifferently. He didn't care about Princess Bai Xiao at all. After merging with the primordial beast's eye, he was already a 3-star genius. Which secret realm expert could be his opponent? Princess Bai Xiao scoffed and said, Hong Tian Bu, you publicly betrayed your country and still want to fight for the title of Heaven's Pride. What a joke. Hong Tian Bu's expression darkened. He didn't want to offend the Chen clan at the moment. After all, Chen Fengyang was at the Life Dan realm, or even stronger. He was an old monster at the True Self realm. Most importantly, his future master had yet to come out of the cage. What if Chen Fengyang was really angered and killed him? Princess Bai Xiao, do you really want to stop me from fighting with Ling Han? Hong Tian Bu said indifferently. He avoided the topic of betrayal. There was nothing to argue about. The more they argued, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Then I can only offend you. He reached out to grab Princess Bai Xiao. Princess Bai Xiao merely flicked her finger lightly. Peng, Hong Tian Bu was blasted flying, and then he crashed heavily onto the ground with an extremely loud sound. What? Everyone's mouths were wide open. They couldn't believe their eyes at all. How was this possible? Hong Tian Bu was actually sent flying with a flick of someone's finger. Hong Tian-bu struggled to get up. There was a bloody hole on his right shoulder, and fresh blood was flowing out. His face was also filled with shock. He couldn't believe that Princess Bai Xiao's strength had reached such a height. Clap, clap, clap. Crisp applause sounded. Jin Yulu stood up. I didn't think that the demon race's princess would be the first person of the younger generation to step onto the celestial path. Congratulations, congratulations. What? Princess Bai Xiao had stepped onto the celestial path? Everyone was shocked. Although there were now not only Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, but even Cauldron Forging Realm and Core Formation Realm cultivators had appeared, they had all come out of the cage. Only the Demon Emperor and Chen Fengyang had broken through under the current circumstances. In reality, Chen Fengyang was also an ancient person. Only the Demon Emperor had truly broken through under the current circumstances. Now, with the addition of the demon race's princess, it could indeed prove that the demon race's level of life below the celestial path was higher than that of the human race. Hong Tian-bu was also stunned. So Princess Bai Xiao had actually leaped over the celestial door and became a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. No wonder she could send him flying with a flick of her finger. This was the difference between celestial and mortal. No matter how monstrous he was, it was useless. Even if he had merged with the eyes of 10 primordial vicious beasts, it was still not enough. Losing to Princess Bai Xiao was not an injustice, and there was no need for him to feel humiliated. Hong Tian-bu, do you admit defeat? Princess Bai Xiao stood with her hands behind her back, ignoring Jin Yulu's words. This was a kind of attitude. So what if you are a disciple of the spirit transformation realm? I don't care about you. Jin Yulu snorted. Princess Bai Xiao, although the Foundation Establishment Realm is the first step on the celestial path, it is still far from being a strong cultivator. It is more than enough to suppress you. This time, Princess Bai Xiao did not pretend that she did not hear it. Is that so? Jin Yulu raised her hand and threw out a small doll. Xiao, the doll quickly enlarged, becoming as tall as 2 people. It was extremely lifelike, but this was not the important point. The important point was that this doll held a long blade in its hand, and it emitted an extremely fierce aura, as if it could even pierce a hole in the sky. War Colossus Ling Han had one in his hands, so he could immediately determine that this was a War Colossus. Because of the craftsmanship of the War Colossus, there were definitely strong and weak ones. This one might not be able to sweep through the Foundation Establishment Realm, but Princess Bai Xiao had just broken through, so how strong could she be in the Foundation Establishment Realm? Sure enough, Jin Yulu had aggressively brought people into the capital. She did not just rely on the reputation of a spirit transformation realm expert, but she did indeed have a great killing weapon in her hands. Princess Bai Xiao smiled faintly. Her Majesty has the breadth of mind to accommodate the world. Since you admire the prosperity of the capital, I will allow you to temporarily stay, but if you violate the laws of the Empire, you will be dealt with according to the laws of the Empire, and then expelled from the capital. Sir Palace Master, what do you think? She looked at Ling Han. Everyone was envious. They had long heard that Ling Han had an unusual relationship with the demon race princess, and looking at the scene in front of them, it was undoubtedly true. Princess Bai Xiao was not only an absolute beauty, she was also the first person in the younger generation to step onto the celestial path. Who would not be envious to be able to have such a beauty? This lucky bastard. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 35-25. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Ling Han smiled faintly, and his eyes swept over Jin Yulu and the others. He did not even spare Hong Tian-bu a glance, and calmly said, "You all better behave yourselves. If you do anything illegal, the External Affairs Department will definitely not be polite. Let's go." He waved his hand. Princess Bai Xiao immediately followed and the two left. The atmosphere at the scene was very oppressive. After a while, some people immediately said that they had something to do and needed to go back to deal with it, while others said that they were not feeling well and needed to be treated immediately. Soon, there were only less than a third of the people left in this place. Jin Yulu's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. Her hands were tightly gripping the armrests of the chair, and her entire body was shrouded in coldness. At this point, even if the martial art festival continued, could it still be called a festival? It was a complete joke. All of this was because of Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao. In this confrontation, it could be said that Ling Han and the others had a slight advantage. Although she had managed to hold on in the end, and had not lost everything, it still could not be denied that their momentum had been suppressed. Otherwise, most of the people would not have run away. Everyone was wondering if the External Affairs Department was so domineering because of Chen Fengyan's attitude. After all, perfected spirit transformation had not appeared yet. If Chen Fengyan really wanted to settle the score, who could stop him? Hong Tianbu's expression was also not good. He had long established a relationship with perfected spirit transformation in the cage. This time, the martial art festival was to create momentum for him, but in the end, it was completely destroyed by Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao. This detestable guy. However, Princess Bai Xiao was actually the first to charge into the immortal path. This shocked him. Even though the environment had changed greatly, it was still very difficult to charge into the immortal path. Even in the previous civilization, only 1 out of 100 people charged into the immortal path. Even if they succeeded, at least half of them would not be able to withstand the heaven and earth interrogation Dao Heart, and their souls would be annihilated. Therefore, it was really too difficult to become an expert of the immortal path. He had to leap over the immortal gate as soon as possible. Otherwise, no matter how monstrous he would still be like an ant in front of Princess Bai Xiao. This was the difference between an immortal and a mortal. Lord Manor Lord, are you satisfied with Bai Xiao's performance? Once they were out of the door, Princess Bai Xiao immediately smiled at Ling Han to ask for praise, 100 points. I'm not afraid that you'll become arrogant even if I give you 10 more points, Ling Han said with a smile. Then when will you teach me the demon monkey fist? Princess Bai Xiao moved closer to him. Ling Han gave an ah, his face full of confusion. What's the demon monkey fist? This guy is too shameless. He actually pretended not to know anything. Princess Bai Xiao was speechless. Even if Ling Han came up with some other excuse, she could still coax and pester him. However, Ling Han was so shameless that she didn't know what to say. Recently, she had already lost all sense of propriety, but compared to Ling Han, she paled in comparison. Ling Han smiled faintly. You still haven't seen that big black dog. If you did, you would start to doubt your own life. How could there be such a shameless existence? Back at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ling Han and Princess Bai Xiao cultivated quietly. They had gained many benefits recently and didn't lack cultivation resources for the time being. Moreover, the news of Jin Yulu's setback had spread. The originally interrupted tide of surrender immediately resumed. Every day, there would be 2 or 3 factions submitting letters of surrender, requiring the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to send people to discuss the matter of accepting them. Right now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was definitely the most profitable department in Xianbei country. Even the princes were envious. However, Chen Fengyan was always in seclusion and no one could see him. What could they do? Jin Yulu's group immediately became low-key. No one knew if they were really frightened or if they were secretly planning something. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. Heaven and earth underwent great changes every day. A few days ago, a strange vine suddenly appeared. Not only in the city, but even the dangerous mountains and rivers couldn't stop its growth. It seemed like it existed in every corner of the world. This is the star-creeping vine. Someone looked through ancient records and recognized this vine. There was only one star-creeping vine on a celestial body. Therefore, although everyone seemed to see many vines, in fact, they were all branches growing from the mother vine. The real mother vine grew from the core of the celestial body. Previously, the environment wasn't right and it lacked the conditions for the mother vine to grow. Now that the world had recovered, the mother vine was thriving again. The star-creeping vine had a special characteristic, which was that it could transmit messages. Every leaf of the vine could record sounds and even images. Communication was also very simple. Using a special frequency, it could achieve the transmission of sound and words. In ancient times and other celestial bodies in the universe, there was no need for communication tools like phones. One star-creeping vine was enough. The appearance of the star-creeping vine meant that the recovery of heavenly starfish was nearing completion. For a moment, the entire celestial body seemed to be connected as one. No matter how far away you were, the transmission of information would happen in an instant. There was no longer a delay of 2 or 3 days like in the past. And the appearance of the star-creeping vine had unexpectedly brought the marine race to the world. Every celestial body had a sea, and since heavenly starfish had the word sea in its name, the sea area was even more astonishing. It occupied nearly 2/3 of the celestial body's area. Moreover, the sea area was three-dimensional and could accommodate even more creatures. The world had changed and the demon race had appeared in the sea. There were also underwater humans. After the fall of the previous civilization, their ancestors had moved to the bottom of the sea and were still pure humans. Because the sea area was huge and the population was even greater, there was naturally no lack of geniuses and experts. There were also countless treasures. However, after the marine race left the sea area, their combat power would be greatly reduced. They would need to step into the path of immortality to eliminate this weakness. Even with the vastness of the sea and the abundance of resources, there were only 4 experts on the path of immortality. Therefore, the marine race had never invaded the land and lived in harmony. With the appearance of the star-creeping vine, the marine race was exposed. The humans of Xian Bei also cried out in surprise. It turned out that their understanding of this world was only the tip of the iceberg. However, since there was a connection, some young marine race geniuses made bold claims. They wanted the imperial capital to meet the so-called proud pair, to let the people of the land know that the marine race was the true ruler of this world. Unfortunately, Ling Han felt very innocent. But if there were really any marine race geniuses, he didn't mind killing them with a punch. Just like that, 7 or 8 days later, there was a shocking news. A sacred mountain had appeared in the sea, suspected to be the legendary Misty Peak. The news immediately shocked the entire heavenly starfish. With the star-creeping vine, any news could be transmitted in real time without any delay. In other words, everyone was now standing on the same starting line. Ling Han turned on his optical computer and searched for information about the Misty Peak. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 35-26. A Good Romance. BQG 6. See what was the first step on the path to immortality. Leaping through the Dragon Gate, building the foundation. Leaping through the Dragon Gate was a metamorphosis of life, and the immortal foundation was the foundation of the path to immortality, the beginning of everything. Therefore, the immortal foundation was extremely, extremely important. The immortal foundation could be built by oneself, but it could also be built with treasures as the core to build the immortal foundation. Generally speaking, with treasures as the core, the immortal foundation would be stronger than ordinary immortal foundations, and it would have other powers as well. Everyone knew that building a house required a strong foundation. The stronger the foundation, the higher the chances of building a skyscraper. It was the same for martial artists. The immortal foundation determined one's future. Just because the foundation was stable did not mean one could reach the spirit transformation realm or even the minor realization realm. However, without a stable immortal foundation, even casting a cauldron was wishful thinking. Misty Peak was a divine mountain. Usually, it was illusory, and no one knew where it was. Every once in a while, it would appear. On the mountain, there were divine stones that could be used as the foundation of the immortal path. It was said that those who could reach the spirit transformation realm and above all used divine stones as the core. Only a very, very small number of powerhouses could reach a very high realm without relying on divine stones, but such people were pitifully few. Moreover, divine stones were the foundation of the immortal path, and they could give the foundation corresponding special abilities. For example, the profound stone could increase a martial artist's ability to sense the Tao of heaven and earth, speeding up cultivation. The fire dragon stone could make the foundation of the immortal path spew out terrifying flames, increasing one's combat ability. The magic illusion stone could create an imaginary world and trap the enemy inside. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, if one could use a divine stone as the core to build the immortal path, the benefits would be astonishing. Now that most people were blocked from the path to immortality, the sudden appearance of Misty Peak would cause a huge commotion. The entire world was boiling over. Whether it was the human race, the demon race, or the marine race, anyone with a bit of ambition was on their way. This opportunity had to be fought for. When Ling Han found out, his heart palpitated with eagerness. Though he was still some distance away from the Spring Immortal's gate, it did not stop him from getting a few divine stones first. When he reached the gate, he could just take the divine stones out. He discussed with Princess Bai Xiao. Princess Bai Xiao would oversee the external affairs residence while Ling Han would head to Ethereal Peak to search for opportunities. By the way, how did you build your immortal Dao foundation stone? Asked Ling Han. This was a bit private, but Ling Han was very curious. Previously, he didn't know that one could use divine stones to build an immortal foundation. He thought of the god's stone he got from breaking the origin world. Could it be used to build a foundation? It shouldn't be possible, because he was still so weak at that time. If he could break it, wouldn't it be a tofu dregs project if he used it to build his foundation? He should have absorbed all the benefits of the god's stone. My fiend race naturally has some backing, passing down some divine stones. I am using the heavenly connecting stone as the core. Princess Bai Xiao spoke with a hint of arrogance. Also from Ethereal Peak? Ling Han asked. Princess Bai Xiao shook her head. Ethereal Peak isn't the only place that has divine stones, but getting them from other places is like accidentally stumbling upon an immortal herb. Ethereal Peak, on the other hand, is like entering a herb garden. The chances of getting something will increase greatly. Ling Han nodded. No wonder Princess Bai Xiao wasn't moved after hearing the news of Ethereal Peak's appearance. Her immortal Dao foundation wasn't weak at all. Then I'll leave all the matters in the residence to you. I'll set off tonight, he said. So urgent. Princess Bai Xiao was a little surprised. I have to be. I don't know when Ethereal Peak will disappear again. Also, I didn't bring the war colossus this time. I have to be careful of people intercepting me halfway. Ling Han smiled. Princess Bai Xiao nodded. Ling Han left the war colossus in the residence. After all, Ling Han was going out for personal matters this time. He shouldn't use the resources of the External Affairs Department. Moreover, the situation was changing. The External Affairs Department still needed a great weapon to hold the fort. Ling Han went back to pack up. When the 7 children learned that Ling Han was going out, they naturally fought to be the first to go. Ling Han thought about it. Instead of letting them cause trouble in the residence, it was better to bring them along. As for the fat pig, it didn't want to go, but Ling Han forcefully dragged it away. This fat pig could be used as a good shield. After putting the children and fat pig into the spirit-nourishing gourd, Ling Han traveled under the cover of the night. He quietly left the External Affairs Department and the city. With his strength, it was naturally easy for him to not be discovered by the guards. Princess Bai Xiao would only announce the news of his departure at noon the next day. This time, he obviously didn't use any means of transportation. He ran on his 2 legs, but when he used wind and cloud drift, his speed was faster than any means of transportation. He hadn't used foot-apart world. This step could cross hundreds of miles, but with his current cultivation, he couldn't use it more than a few times. It could only be used as an ultimate move to save his life. After walking for a few minutes, he leaped onto the top of the tree. The capital was already very far away, but he could still see the bright lights, which showed how prosperous the capital was. He didn't know how long it would take for him to return after leaving this time. Ling Han withdrew his gaze. He had been working hard to improve his cultivation. He believed that after crossing the Celestial Gate, his mental power would increase by a ton. At that time, he should be able to release the Empress and the others. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel excited and full of desire for strength. He used his movement technique and rushed forward quickly, but after a while, he suddenly felt an inexplicable discomfort as if he was being watched. He stopped and used his pupil technique to look around, but he didn't find anything. He was too paranoid. Ling Han frowned slightly. He was already so careful, and this decision was made very suddenly, but he was still being watched. He shook his head and continued to run. After completing the tempering of the 7 bones, his bones were incredibly sturdy and strong. Even if he used wind and cloud drift, he was completely fine after more than an hour, but his organs and skin that didn't have inscriptions couldn't take it. Those organs felt like they were about to explode, and his skin felt waves of pain as if it was about to be torn apart. The organs could be improved through inscriptions, but the skin didn't have the corresponding cultivation level to cultivate. Thus, even the strongest martial artist would be injured. However, the higher the cultivation level, the harder it was to be heavily injured and die. Then he could only cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Though it wasn't perfect, it could at least improve his defense. He stopped to rest, and when his body recovered, he continued on his way. This time, he didn't use wind and cloud drift. Anyways, his normal speed wasn't slow, so there was no need to strive for that speed that was twice the speed of sound. After running for a few hours, the sky gradually turned white, and a red sun suddenly jumped out, releasing millions of rays of morning light, filled with the vitality of life. Ling Han hurriedly stopped and began to cultivate. Right at this moment, he suddenly sensed a strand of absolute killing intent, and he suddenly leaped up. Bang! A small mushroom cloud had already appeared where he sat cross-legged just now, and boundless dust and sand swept into the air. End of this chapter. Cell phone reading is more refreshing. Chapter 35-28. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC. After traveling along the water for half a day, Ling Han came out of the essence-nourishing gourd. He felt that it was a pity that he had missed today's cultivation. As for Hong Tianbiyu's pursuit, he did not take it to heart. The two of them were already like fire and water. This was all too normal. Cultivation, I'm improving too slowly. Ling Han murmured. Actually, his cultivation was not slow at all, it was just that it could not be compared to some super lucky people. But I'm winning by taking one step at a time, laying down an incomparably solid foundation. Ling Han made an objective evaluation. He continued on his way. Since Ethereal Peak was overseas, they definitely had to cross the sea. Therefore, the first step was to get to the seaside and find a boat to cross. The current overseas was said to be incomparably dangerous. Not only could the sea race not be ignored, but there were also inexplicable danger zones in the sea. After entering the sea, the originally calm sea would suddenly surge with huge waves, easily crushing the mystic realm cultivators there. There would be reefs floating on the surface of the water, mysterious singing would be heard at night, and those who went to investigate would never return. In short, there were many mysterious places in the sea, and they were not to be underestimated. To cross the sea, it was best to find an experienced ferry, otherwise, it was very likely that he would be buried at the bottom of the sea and become food for the fishes and prawns. Xian Bay country was huge, and there were many cities near the sea, so there were many routes out to the sea. Originally, Ling Han would definitely choose the shortest route, but now that he was being chased by Hong Tianbiyu, he naturally had to reconsider. He quickly made his choice and headed for Four Sun City. This was a seaside city with a dock, but it was not considered big, and it was also not close to him. If he could still bump into Hong Tianbiyu, Ling Han could only consider himself unlucky. At most, he would just have to run again. He traveled at 4 times the speed of sound, and it took him less than 2 days to reach Four Sun City. He first found a place to rest, and when he recovered to his peak condition, Ling Han went to the dock to look for a boat to go out to sea. Unexpectedly, there was a sea of people here, and it was hard to find a ferry. Moreover, the ticket price was ridiculously high. If you didn't want to sit on it, there would be others who would beg you to get on the boat with a lot of money. Ling Han found a large ship. Since he was going out to sea, a large ship would definitely be safer and more comfortable. This ticket was actually bought through bidding, and it cost him a few thousand jade seeds. It was no different from robbery. Fortunately, what Ling Han lacked the least was jade seeds. Now that the network was completely paralyzed, and the imperial family's ruling power was not as strong as before, These remote cities no longer used Shenbei coins, but directly used jade seeds to trade. Ling Han had brought many spatial artifacts with him. Some were filled with jade seeds, while others were filled with food. He had everything he needed. Paying for the ticket was a piece of cake. The captain said that they would leave early the next morning. The night passed. After Ling Han finished his cultivation, he arrived at the pier and prepared to board the ship. However, just as he was about to board the ship, someone stopped him. "I'm really sorry, this ship has been booked by a lord. Here, the ticket is returned to you," a crew member said and threw out a bag. Ling Han frowned and said, "Since I bought the ticket, you have the obligation to bring me out to sea. If you suddenly go back on your word, how will you make up for my losses?" Being able to board Misty Peak at the first moment would definitely give him an advantage. It had already been 4 or 5 days since the news had spread. Ling Han did not want to waste another 2 or 3 days. "Haha, I can't do anything about that. This is my family's boss's decision. It's useless even if you tell me." The crew member shrugged, looking as if it had nothing to do with him, "So don't bother me." He was extremely proactive when collecting money, but now he was trying to delay it in every possible way. Ling Han snorted and said, "Today, you must give me an explanation." "What explanation do you want?" There was a sneer and a group of people walked out of the cabin. The leader was a young man who looked to be in his 20s and had an arrogant expression. There were 7 people behind him, including a middle-aged man in his 30s and a white-haired old man in his 70s. However, even the white-haired old man had a majestic gait and an imposing aura. Clearly, this group was all martial artists. Ling Han activated his eye technique, and with a single glance, he was able to see through everyone's cultivation level. 2 secret-seeking realms and 5 enlightening realms. The young man's cultivation was the weakest, only inscriptions, which was the same as him. He should have come from a cage, right? Otherwise, how could an engravement realm young man lead a group of powerful subordinates? As long as he used absolute fairness to defeat those 2 secret-seeking realms, the rest would not be a problem. Ling Han pondered and then looked at the young man. "You're the one who ignored the rules and stole this ship. Haha, I have a jade seed. So what if I love to throw money?" The young man laughed with exaggerated arrogance. Ling Han knew that this was because he had been suppressed in the cage for too long. Now that he had escaped and was suddenly placed in the world of flowers, he would definitely be overwhelmed. It was not strange for him to be unbelievably arrogant. However, he had picked the wrong target. Ling Han shook his head. "Then I'll have to ask you to disembark." "How dare you?" A middle-aged man immediately jumped out. "How dare you speak to my young master like that? You must be tired of living. Breaking his legs and pulling out his tongue is enough." "There's no need to kill," the young man said calmly. "Young master is kind." The others all praised, making the young man feel smug as if he was a benevolent ruler. "Xiao," the middle-aged man charged out and punched at Ling Han. He was at the enlightening state and had opened more than 20 acupoints. When he punched out, not only was the fist force surging, but the acupoints were also releasing power like hidden weapons. Although the power was not as powerful as the bombardment of fists and weapons, it was hard to guard against. However, Ling Han activated his eye technique, and could clearly see each and every one of his opponent's attacks. He moved forward and launched a strong attack. Bang, bang, bang. In just a few moves, the middle-aged man was knocked off the ship and fell into the sea with a splash. Heh! The young man and the others were all surprised. They did not expect Ling Han to be so strong. "Zhong Quan, Zhao Xian, the 4 of you come together," a white-haired man said. Immediately, the remaining 4 enlightening state cultivators walked out and surrounded Ling Han. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back, not taking the 4 seriously at all. "Pretentious," the young man said unhappily. This should be his privilege, but it made him feel like his limelight was stolen. "Young man, you will pay for your arrogance." The 4 enlightening state cultivators attacked at the same time. They did not have the restraint of a master and worked together as a matter of course. Because in the cage, the enlightening state could not be called a master, and naturally could not develop the bearing of a master. Ling Han used his eye sorcery to see through the Four's attacks and then counterattacked. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. Chapter 35-29. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CC bang, bang, bang. Ling Han was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. With just a few moves, he defeated the 4 enlightening realm cultivators like cutting vegetables. What? The 2 elders of the mystery-seeking realm were finally moved. Ling Han's battle prowess obviously hadn't crossed into the level of the mystery-seeking realm, but his battle prowess far surpassed that of an ordinary enlightenment realm warrior. It was simply unimaginable. This was definitely a martial art genius, who could crush the same level as easily as drinking water. In their view, Ling Han should also be in the enlightening realm, otherwise, they really could not imagine that someone could surpass a realm and still be invincible. Young man, who is your master? A white-headed old man asked Ling Han. He was afraid of Ling Han's background. To be able to cultivate such a genius, he must be a true self-old monster, or a spirit transformation perfected cultivator. Therefore, he had to be cautious. Ling Han smiled faintly. My master is great self-heavenly master, above the 9 heavens, in charge of the universe. What a great feeling. The 2 elders looked at each other. Naturally, it was impossible for them to have heard of this name. Boy, are you fooling us? The other elder shouted. He had a head full of black hair, but there were too many wrinkles. Ling Han clapped his hands. Smart. Humph, playing tricks in front of us, you are seeking your own death. The white-headed old man was furious and rushed towards Ling Han, one hand reaching out and grabbing. After all, he had scruples, so this blow was to take down Ling Han, not to kill him. Ling Han immediately activated absolute fairness, and the aura of the white-headed old man suddenly plummeted. He was not a strong cultivator of the immortal path, nor did he merge with the eyes of an ancient fierce creature, nor was he the descendant of spirit transformation perfected cultivator, so he could be rewarded with some treasure to resist the suppression of absolute fairness. Ling Han rushed up, and with a punch, bang, the white-headed old man was knocked unconscious. Impossible. The other old man exclaimed in shock. Ling Han had clearly only displayed the battle prowess of the opening aperture tier, but why was it that his companion's performance was even worse than the others before him? He couldn't even block a single blow. Ling Han rushed towards the black-haired old man again, and blasted another punch. The black-haired old man was already prepared, but his realm was directly pulled down by absolute fairness. How could he be a match for Ling Han? Bang, he was also knocked unconscious with a punch. Ling Han clapped his hands, and looked towards the young man. How is it now? A look of fear appeared on the young man's face. He had relied on his followers, but now that even his followers had been defeated, he immediately felt panic in his heart. You, what do you want? He stuttered. My father is Zhong Ziyun, a true self-realm expert. Ling Han chuckled, and said, nothing much. I just wanted to give you a beating so that you will remember clearly that this is not a cage where you can do whatever you want. The young man retreated a few steps, and said, you have guts, you actually dare. Ling Han reached out and grabbed the young man, and started to beat him up. What do you mean dare? I am Hong Tian Bu, the capital's #1 genius. Don't you know? Ling Han made Hong Tian Bu hate him. What Hong Tian Bu? Is he very powerful? The young man was confused, but his nose was punched, causing blood to flow from his nose, and he immediately screamed. But the other 7 people had heard of Hong Tian Bu, and they were all shocked. No wonder this person was so strong, he was one of the capital's 2 geniuses, Hong Tian Bu. After Ling Han beat up the young man, he drove the group of people off the ship. The captain and the others were all frightened by Ling Han's strength, and they all trembled. Ling Han said coldly, set sail according to the original plan, no problem, right? No, absolutely not. These people hurriedly shook their heads. Some people had arrived long ago, but were driven away, so these people naturally could not be found. Those who came late did not know of such an episode, and did not notice it at all. After boarding the ship, they entered their own rooms. At 11 o'clock, the ship set sail, and went out to sea. Seeing the ship go far away, the young man who was beaten up appeared again, and said hatefully, Quickly contact third senior brother, tell him to kill Hong Tian Bu when he meets him at Misty Peak. No. He hurriedly shook his head, don't kill him, leave him for me to kill personally. Yes, young master. A few followers hurriedly said. With the star-treading vine, communication was too convenient, and distance was not a problem at all. Achoo! On a ship, Hong Tian Bu suddenly sneezed. He rubbed his nose, he really had bad luck recently, or else with his mystic-seeking realm cultivation, how could he sneeze? Obviously, his bad luck was not as simple as a sneeze. After the ship left the dock, it raised its sails, and immediately broke through the wind and waves, and began to speed up. Recently, it was full of people going to Misty Peak, and this ship had already made 3 trips back and forth, so it could be said that it was a walk in the park. Therefore, the captain patted his chest and guaranteed that this trip would only take less than a day, and it would be absolutely safe. After entering the deep sea, although there were wind and waves, the wind was not too strong, and the waves were not too big. The ship slightly shook, but it never stopped, causing some people to have symptoms of seasickness and vomit non-stop. This had nothing to do with strength, some people were just seasickness. Ling Han did not have any reaction to this, and even if he was seasickness, he only needed to enter the spirit-nourishing gourd to avoid this feeling. However, a few hours later, a dark cloud came, blocking the sun, and suddenly, the world became dark. What's wrong? Everyone ran out of the cabin, and came to the deck. There was still a long time before the sky turned dark, but suddenly it became so dark, it was unacceptable. Don't worry, don't worry. A crew member comforted, the clouds in the sky, the wind on the sea, the heart of a girl is always unpredictable, it's very normal. This guy was actually a bit poetic. Everyone laughed, since he said it was very normal, then there was no need to be nervous. Ling Han activated his ocular technique, but frowned, and said, a fog appeared on the sea, is this also very normal? What fog? Everyone followed his gaze, but they didn't see anything. The light was too dim. Kid, what nonsense are you talking about? I'm warning you, don't say scary things. Be careful, or I'll beat you up. Everyone rebuked him, thinking that Ling Han was deliberately making up some lies to attract attention. But that crew member had seen Ling Han's power before, and couldn't help but be shocked, and quickly shouted, Boss, there's a fog in front. Immediately, the captain steered the rudder, and urgently turned around. This was too urgent, everyone felt as if the ship was about to capsize, and quickly grabbed onto things around them, lest they were sent flying. Ling Han used 1000 Catty Fall, and his body was firmly locked on the deck. He looked ahead, only to see that the fog was quickly rushing over. He shook his head. Not to mention the fact that the ship was still turning, even if it had adjusted its direction and sailed at full speed, it still could not outrun this fog. In the blink of an eye, endless fog rolled over. Reading on mobile phones is more refreshing. Chapter 3530. A Good Romance. BQG 6. Sissiboom, along with the dense fog came a huge wave, crashing heavily on the hull of the ship. Many people were sent flying, and some even fell into the sea. It was as if there were dumplings in the sea. Fortunately, after the first wave, it stopped, and the hull of the ship swayed a few times before regaining stability. Everyone hurriedly threw down ropes to save the people, but the fog was too thick, and it was difficult to see their fingers in front of them. If they were hit far away by the wave, they would not be able to see the ship, let alone the ropes. Everyone shouted, using sound as a guide. Ling Han grabbed a rope, and directly leapt off the ship. After activating his eye technique, he had already seen a person. When he landed, he picked that person up, and flung him towards the deck. He did not stop, grabbing the rope with his hand and tapping on the hull of the ship with the tip of his foot. Soon, he found a second person, and did the same, throwing him onto the deck. 3, 4, 5 people. Some people were at a loss and were thrown onto the deck by him, while others were extremely defensive and actually attacked him when he tried to rescue them. Fortunately, the people who fell off the ship were too weak, so how could they hurt Ling Han? In less than a few minutes, Ling Han circled around the ship and rescued at least 20 people. If one counted, this number was more than half of the people who had fallen into the water. He returned to the deck, and immediately many people ran to him to thank him, but some people showed disdain, as if they thought that saving this kind of trash would lower their status. The strange thing was, looking outside the hull, the visibility was less than a foot, but the deck was unusually clear, as if the fog could not invade the ship. "It's over, it's over." A crew member sat down, his eyes lifeless, looking incomparably hopeless. Immediately, other crew members walked over and whispered to the other party, making him quiet down. "Hey, hey, hey, what are you talking about?" A passenger was unhappy. "What's over? Is there something strange about this fog?" "Nothing, nothing." A few crew members smiled, but their smiles were a little fake. "What's going on?" This made even more people nervous. One look and they could tell that something was wrong. Under the continuous questioning of the crowd, the captain was forced to come out and explain to the crowd. Previously, some ships encountered the fog and were trapped for a long time. Some crew members and passengers even mysteriously disappeared and have not been found until now. Disappeared mysteriously, haha. Could he have been eaten by a sea monster? Someone immediately laughed. All in all, everyone must be careful. It's best to stay together and not split up, the captain said sternly. Seeing his serious expression, some of the people who wanted to retort did not say anything. Although martial artists were all very confident and did not believe in ghosts or gods, only believing in themselves, the fog this time was too strange, so they had no choice but to take it seriously. "Everyone, don't be too nervous. This fog will only last until the next morning. Although it will take up some of our time, it will definitely dissipate," the captain said. "So you're planning to stop the boat and wait here for half a day?" someone shouted. This won the approval of many people, and they all cheered. Under such strong pressure, the captain could only continue sailing. But they did not know whether the fog was shockingly large or not. After sailing for half an hour, there was still no sign of them leaving. Ling Han could clearly see that the ship had actually been circling in this area. It was not that the captain had done it on purpose, but because of the undercurrent, the ship had unknowingly changed its direction, causing them to keep circling. With Ling Han's current speed, he did not need to run at full speed. He could walk on the waves as if he was walking on flat ground, but he did not even know where Misty Peak was. Even if he ran in that direction, he might miss it because of a slight error. After all, for the vast sea, an island or a mountain was really too small. Therefore, if he hurried on his own, it might actually waste more time. Ling Han was willing to wait for half a day. There were many people who had the same idea as him. After all, as long as one entered the blood transformation realm, they would be able to walk on the waves at supersonic speed. Everyone gradually calmed down. Since they could not leave this godforsaken place for the time being, they might as well be patient. After all, it was only half a day. Shrouded in fog, even though it was not night yet, it was already dark. The captain got someone to light a torch. It was easy for people to develop negative emotions in a dark environment. Someone did not give up and threw a torch into the fog. But as soon as he threw it out, he could not see it anymore. Oh right, the captain seemed to have suddenly thought of something. At night, there will be mysterious singing. You must cover your ears. It is said that many people have gone missing after listening to singing. There were many rumors on the sea. For example, there was a huge whirlpool that swallowed a huge ship. There was also a black turtle that was bigger than a city that created huge waves with a flip and capsized the ship. There was also a mysterious singer that sang to confuse people. Everyone was shocked. Were they going to encounter such a strange thing? Who could sing on the sea? So, everyone cover your ears first. The captain looked at his watch. There are still about 2 hours before it gets dark. Let's hurry up and eat. After eating, everyone should be alert and we will get through this together. No one said a word. The atmosphere was distorted by the captain's words, causing everyone's hearts to be in their throats. Soon, everyone had their dinner in advance. Then, they waited for the night to fall. Although they could not see anything in the fog, they could only judge by the passage of time. When night fell, everyone became nervous. What would happen tonight? Time passed quietly. It was so quiet on the ship that they could hear the heartbeats of others. Martial artists were full of vigor and vitality. Their biological functions were terrifying. Their heartbeats were strong and powerful. Usually, they did not feel anything when they talked or did things. But it was so quiet now that their heartbeats could be heard clearly. Thump, thump, thump. Everyone's heartbeats rose and fell. Even though they had cotton in their ears, it did not work. It was as if their heartbeats had been magnified many times. Ah! Someone suddenly screamed. Who is it? Where is the murderer? Come out. Immediately, many people drew their weapons and roared out one by one. They were already in a state of panic. The scream directly ignited the tension on the scene. Well, someone said weakly, I was not attacked by anyone. I was just too nervous and was blown by a dark phoenix. That's why I couldn't help but scream. F***ck. Everyone was speechless. Aren't you a little too cowardly? The people who jumped out all put away their weapons, and their faces were a little embarrassed. Everyone sat down again. The ship was quiet again. Did you guys hear someone singing? After a while, someone suddenly said with a trembling voice. It was more refreshing to read on the phone. Chapter 35-32. A Good Romance. BQG 6. These mermaids bewitched people with their inaudible songs, so their spiritual energy was obviously not weak. Unfortunately, compared to Ling Han, they paled in comparison. Ling Han had been developing his spiritual energy for a long time and had always focused on improving his telekinesis. He also had the spirit-nourishing gourd, which could produce some strange energy to nourish the spirit and improve his telekinesis. Being hit so suddenly, Ling Han only felt a slight pain in his knowledge sea, but it was not enough to hurt him. He spread out his telekinesis and turned it into an invisible shield, but the incoming spiritual energy attacks were all smashed into pieces, unable to hurt him at all. Not good. This human's telekinesis is extremely strong. Use the Poseidon horn to deal with him. A merman took out a green conch shell and blew it. Immediately, dense fog rolled out and covered the small reef. There was no fog here, but now that the fog had dispersed, one could not see their fingers in front of them. It was much thicker than the sea. Ling Han was fearless. He opened his ocular sorcery, which could see through illusions. Although it was not comparable to second babies, it was more than enough to deal with the current situation. Xiao, a sword silently pierced over. Ling Han punched back. Peng, suddenly, the long sword flew up, and the mermaid who attacked turned into a mist of blood. What? This fog can not only block vision, but also has a great confusion effect on divine sense. Why is it ineffective against him? What a monster! The mermaids all exclaimed. They had never met such an opponent, and all methods were ineffective against him. Join forces to activate the Poseidon horn. Several mermaids worked together to blow the conch. Hong, a frightening hurricane formed, and swept towards Ling Han. The speed of its movement was not very fast, but its rotation was extraordinarily fast, enough to forcefully grind even fine iron into pieces. Ling Han kicked out, and Peng, the hurricane was immediately kicked away. The mermaids were all shocked speechless. This human was simply too strong. Retreat. The imitation Poseidon horn cannot do anything to him. Ask the masters of our race to suppress him. Plop. Plop. The merpeople jumped into the sea one after another, fleeing without a trace. Ling Han did not give chase. The sea was not his home ground. First of all, he would not be able to hold his breath for too long, and when he reached the depths of the sea, even his physique would not be able to withstand the terrifying water pressure, and he would be squashed flat. Once the merfolk were gone, or it could be said that the sea god's horn that created the dense fog was gone, the fog immediately dispersed, and those people who had been bewitched all woke up as if from a dream. Why am I here? Shouldn't I be on the boat? I think I heard a beautiful song. Why can't I hear it anymore? These people were very confused. They had lost their memories of the time when they were bewitched. Not far away, the ship gradually appeared. We're here. The people on the reef shouted, waving their hands. Only then did they remember the legend that those who heard the song at night would disappear and never be able to return. They were all scared and unconsciously appeared on the reef, only one step away from disappearing. The people on the ship also saw them and waved their flags to signal them. There were reefs here, so the ship didn't dare approach. So the people on the reef all used their movement arts and began to run on the sea. Everyone had at least blood transformation cultivation bases, so running on the sea was a piece of cake. As long as the waves weren't too strong, they wouldn't be smashed into the water. Once they got close to the ship, they all jumped up and landed on the deck. In just a moment, everyone had returned to the ship. The people on the ship hastily asked what had happened, but none of them could say anything. All they knew was that when they had woken up, they had been on that reef. How strange. Everyone nodded. Thinking of the legend, they could only think of it as a legend of the sea. Since the fog has scattered, we can set off, someone suggested. The captain immediately nodded. Although no one was missing and the fog had scattered, he still felt uneasy. He wanted to quickly leave this damnable place, so he had the crew raise the sails and start rowing. "Look at that reef," someone shouted, pointing at the small reef. Everyone looked over, and a strange scene appeared. That piece of reef was actually melting, and very soon, it disappeared. It was made of ice. Ling Han was also a bit surprised. No wonder he had felt a chill when they had approached the reef. "Hurry up and leave this damnable place," urged everyone. The ship raised its sails and quickly left the sea. After driving far away, everyone finally heaved a sigh of relief. That place was really too strange. The night passed and the sun rose. Everyone hurriedly cultivated. They had originally planned to reach Misty Peak at noon, but because they had been delayed for so long the previous day, they only saw a towering mountain peak at dusk. Misty Peak. Everyone was excited. It was like holding a divine stone in their hands would allow them to break through to immortality. Seeing the divine mountain was one thing, but reaching it was another. The ship traveled for over an hour before finally getting close to the divine mountain. The ship didn't reach the shore. There were many reefs near the shore, and if they tried to get close, they would only run aground. Fortunately, this bit of distance was a piece of cake. Everyone jumped off the ship and walked on the water. In fact, experts like Ling Han didn't need to take a ship to go back. They could cross the sea on foot, but they couldn't run into big waves. Otherwise, they could easily be swept away by the sea, which could be a great danger. Ling Han also moved. He didn't need to go all out. He jogged at 3 times the speed of sound and quickly reached the shore. This was actually an island, a very large island. The center of the island was the cloud-piercing Misty Peak. No one knew how high it was. In any case, they couldn't see the top at all. Looking back, the waves on the surface of the sea shimmered. Under the light of the setting sun, it looked like there were thousands of golden snakes dancing, majestic and magnificent. He walked on the beach. The sand was snow-white, as if it was made of milk. It was also very soft to the touch. But after a few steps, he felt that the bottom was actually empty, and his whole body was sinking. Peng, the white sand flew, and a bloody mouth appeared below. The teeth were like swords, about 2 feet long. Moreover, they were arranged in rows, and they were as thick as 4 rows. Ling Han hurriedly used his psychic power to wrap his foot with stone energy. Then, he stepped toward one of the sharp teeth. Peng, he used the force to soar into the sky, and then fell backward. He landed on the beach, and the monster hiding under the sand also revealed its true appearance. It was actually a super-large lizard, completely white. This was also one of the reasons why it could hide in the sand and carry out ambushes. This was really a huge monster. Its body was at least 10 feet long. At this moment, its mouth was open, and saliva flowed out. Its eyes stared closely at Ling Han, and it was incomparably fierce. Reading on the phone was more refreshing. Chapter 35-33. A Good Romance. BQG 6. CCTSK, I've just arrived at Ethereal Peak, and I'm already taking you down a notch. 4-legged snake, you're quite sneaky, said Ling Han with a smile. He kicked his feet. Even though he wrapped his feet with stone energy, his energy layer was still pierced by the sharp teeth, and even his shoes were pierced. Fortunately, his feet were not injured. The giant lizard did not speak, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. Millimeter. Ling Han had initially thought that it was a member of the demonic tribe, and had only transformed into its original form. However, from the looks of it now, it seemed like a native wild beast of this place. Although it was powerful, it was filled with a wild nature, and did not possess any intelligence. I wonder if lizard meat tastes good, he mumbled, and his fighting spirit gradually rose. The giant lizard was very cautious, which was evident from the fact that it was ambushing instead of attacking head-on. Therefore, when it thought that Ling Han was powerful, it naturally did not attack right away. Instead, it was observing, as if it wanted to find out Ling Han's weakness. Ling Han laughed. "Since you're not going to change, I'll do it." He roared and charged at the giant lizard. Bang, bang, bang. He blasted a terrifying force across the air, and he even attached high-level metal energy to it, which greatly increased his destructive power. However, the shocking thing was that although the force of his punch could tear the lizard's defense, it was not very effective, and only a few scales were shaken off. It was a very powerful defense. Ling Han looked around. There wasn't just one of these giant lizards, but rather, they covered the entire beach. Many people had been ambushed. Some didn't even have the power to resist and were directly swallowed, while others had luckily escaped the calamity. However, many of them had suffered heavy injuries, and there were quite a few who had lost an arm or a leg. Many people were not a match for the giant lizard at all. It was useless even if they managed to escape, as they were soon killed and abandoned their armor. Some of them managed to escape back to the sea and directly chased after the ferry that had gone far away. Others failed to escape and were caught and swallowed whole. In just a few minutes, more than half of the hundreds of people who had disembarked were dead. There were still 7 people persisting, but the other lizards did not dive into the sea to chase after them. Instead, they surrounded them and wanted to kill everyone on the beach. Ling Han snorted and took out his 2-star magic sword. Shua, a sword light flashed past, and it was like a light that could split the heavens and split the earth in the boundless darkness. A third of a large lizard's neck was instantly slashed open, and fresh blood spurted out. It was true that Ling Han was unable to unleash the full power of a 2-star magical artifact, but the grade of this sword was still there. How sharp was it? He brandished his sword and danced. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Streaks of sword chi flew out. He was like a god of death, harvesting the lives of these giant lizards. After the death of 7 large lizards, the remaining large lizards fled in panic, not daring to face Ling Han's blade again. Ling Han sheathed his sword and glanced around. In just a short period of time, another 3 people were killed by the giant lizard and left this world forever. Many thanks. The 4 survivors walked over, and clasped their hands in thanks to Ling Han. If it wasn't for Ling Han's efforts to turn the tide, they would definitely have perished. This made them extremely depressed. Could it be that they could not even take the first step in the engravement realm? Ling Han raised his hand and looked at Misty Peak. They had just arrived and they were already attacked by a group of lizards. What kind of danger would there be next? In the distance, a figure was currently flying over at an astonishing speed, causing dust to fill the sky behind him. Hong Tian Biu. Ling Han did not find it strange. If it were him, he would also wait here. This was called waiting for a hare to come to him. Ling Han. Hong Tian Biu had already arrived. He did not stop and directly used the eye of the ancient beast. A giant eyeball suddenly appeared in the air. It was incomparably ferocious, and it stared at Ling Han. Even if they were not directly stared at, the other 4 were still affected. Grey lines appeared on their skin, and in just an instant, they had turned into stone statues. Ling Han also felt his body stiffen. He was shocked. This was the eye of the ancient beast that Hong Tian Biu had obtained. It actually had the ability to petrify people. The opponent had used such a great killing weapon the moment they arrived. Obviously, they did not want to give him any chance to escape and wanted to kill him in one go. Ling Han completely activated his secret force and psychokinesis. Especially the Monkey King's cultivation method, he only felt his body lighten and recovered his ability to move. Although he was still greatly affected, he was not completely unable to move. So close, yet worlds apart. He moved his feet and immediately dashed out 50 miles. As expected, he was still affected. Otherwise, he would be able to cross at least 100 miles with a single step. However, he had also left the area of influence of the eye. Ling Han immediately recovered his ability to move. He used so close, yet worlds apart again and again. After a few times, he had already entered the depths of this large island. Hong Tian Bu was stunned. He absolutely did not expect that even after he had used his strongest trump card, he still could not kill Ling Han. Pu. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Activating the ability of the ancient beast eye was also a huge burden on him. In theory, he should only be able to use it after stepping into the celestial path, but who asked him to be a monster? However, even the petrification technique that had a trace of the might of the celestial path was not able to completely restrain Ling Han. This caused Hong Tianbu's expression to become somewhat unsightly. This opponent was too difficult to deal with. Even with this, he still could not kill him. No, he definitely could not let Ling Han step into the celestial path. Otherwise, he would definitely become a great calamity for him. Hong Tianbu took out an elixir and swallowed it, suppressing the boiling blood in his body. He would definitely drag out Ling Han here and kill him. He would not give his opponent any more space to grow. Ling Han stopped. Using so close, yet worlds apart consecutively made him feel like he was about to explode. This was originally a secret technique used by Celestials. It was already very amazing for him to be able to grasp and use it, but he still wanted to use it continuously. He rested for a while and calmed the boiling blood in his body. When his skin was no longer scalding hot, he stood up again and released the milk babies and lascivious pig. Is this Misty Peak? Oh, it is indeed filled with the smell of a formation. There is a very ancient aura. It should have existed for countless years. The milk babies were all acting like they were old and experienced as they commented there. Lascivious pig, on the other hand, was disinterested. He spread his limbs and lay on the ground, looking as if he would win if he moved. Let's go. Ling Han set off with the milk babies. Although he had used so close, yet worlds apart to run a few hundred miles in one go, that mountain was still extremely far away. It did not feel like he was getting closer at all. Was this island that big? Ling Han expressed his doubts. If he were to look at it from the boat, it would at most be a few hundred miles in radius. They advanced towards Misty Peak. Along the way, there were dense forests and shrubs. All of them had sharp thorns that were even sharper than sharp swords. A single touch would definitely cause one's skin to break and blood to flow. Fortunately, there was no poison. Otherwise, it would be terrible. However, as they walked, Ling Han realized that something was wrong. That was because they had already walked for thousands of miles, but the distance between them and that mountain did not shorten at all. It was more refreshing to read on the phone. Chapter 35-34. BQG6. CC BQG6. CC array formation. Ling Han thought to himself. Previously, the children had also said that there was the smell of an ancient array formation here, so it could be explained why they could not reach the end after walking around. However, knowing was one thing, and how to break it was another. Ling Han and the second baby both activated their eye technique, but they could not see anything. The mountain was still the same mountain, and the water was still the same water. There was no change. Obviously, it was not that there was no array formation here, but that the two of them were too weak to see through this array formation. Ling Han stopped. Since he could not see through it, he could only look for the pattern. He leaped onto a tall tree and looked into the distance. He was an array master, and his talent was extraordinary. From a different angle, he saw something different. This terrain, TSK, there is water in the fire, and there is killing in the water. Is this like a dragon raising its head, or is this like beheading a phoenix? Ling Han murmured. Although he was not qualified to study immortal path-level array patterns, he had seen many descriptions of array formations from the void beast skin. Array formations were a kind of use of the power of heaven and earth. Therefore, there were carnate arrays, which were formed naturally, and postnatal arrays, which were man-made. In fact, postnatal arrays were all imitations of carnate arrays, Or perhaps they were inspired and evolved. Imitation was definitely easier than innovation. Ling Han matched the terrain with the array formations in the array formation treasure book, nodding his head repeatedly as he came to a sudden realization. However, he seemed to have seen some clues, but if he wanted to crack it, no way. This was an immortal path-level array formation. Regardless of whether it was carnate or postnatal, it was not something that Ling Han could crack at the moment. Though I can't decipher it, if I avoid these places, wouldn't it be a safe path? Ling Han murmured. After sweeping his gaze over the surroundings, he found an entry point, and then leaped down. Let's go. He continued to set off with the children, taking turns along the way. As expected, the effect immediately became different. He was getting closer and closer to Ethereal Peak. But before he could reach the foot of the mountain, night fell first. Yi, the Great Dipper transposition. Ling Han was astonished. In that instant, a heaven-shaking, earth-toppling transformation had occurred on the island. He hurriedly came to a halt. If he continued, he would be walking astray. They stopped to eat and rest. After that, they had to coax the 7 children to sleep. He was so tired that he was sweating all over. Perverted Pig looked at him and grinned as if he was gloating. Damned pig, do you believe that I won't turn you into a roast pig tomorrow? Ling Han threatened. Everyone said that one's mouth was short after eating from others. This damned pig had eaten so many meals from him, but it had always been hostile towards him. He had never seen such a shameless pig. Perverted Pig snorted at him, completely unconcerned. You actually dared to grab this Uncle Pig from the crowd of beauties in the imperial capital. This Uncle Pig was already giving you face by not biting you to death. The night passed, and the sun rose as usual, sprinkling warm sunlight. Ling Han immediately began to cultivate. Right now, he wished that he could have 2 or 3 or even more sunrises every day so that he could have more time to expand his meridians and reach the peak of 3 Ming as soon as possible. Then, he would advance all the way to the Enlightenment realm and the Mystic Seeking realm. He swore that when he entered the Mystic Seeking realm, he would definitely beat Hong Tianbu into a retard. The 7 children and Perverted Pig did not need to cultivate. When Ling Han finished cultivating and prepared breakfast, they lazily opened their eyes. Food really came to them as soon as they opened their mouths. After eating his fill, Ling Han once again observed the environment. The strange thing was that the environment had now returned to the same situation as yesterday evening. Ling Han walked as usual, getting closer and closer to the misty peak. However, by noon, he had truly arrived at the foot of the mountain. There were many people here. Ling Han took a closer look. Although it was not a sea of people, there were indeed quite a number of them. Furthermore, apart from the human race, he also saw many demons, such as those with wolf heads and snake tails, but there were also species that he had never seen before. For example, those with 2 huge pincers, their original form should be that of a crab. There was also the walrus man, with a round body and thick black skin. His unique characteristics were extremely obvious. Sea race. Since these people had arrived at the foot of the mountain, why did they not ascend the mountain? Ling Han did not act rashly. He did not know if Hong Tianbu was lying in ambush at the side, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One must know that this fellow was also proficient in formations, and even had the eye of a primordial beast. At the current stage, it should be even more powerful than Ling Han's eye sorcery. He climbed to a high place to take a look. In front of these people was a very wide mountain path, but currently, no one was climbing it. Why? Very soon, Ling Han found out the reason. Rumble, he saw a huge stone ball rolling down from the mountain, bringing with it an incomparably powerful impact as it heavily rolled over. There were characters on the stone ball faintly glowing, emitting a terrifying killing intent. Even though he was so far away, Ling Han still felt a chill, and did not want to be touched by the stone ball. These people did not go up at the foot of the mountain, obviously afraid of being crushed to death by the stone ball. But couldn't they climb from other places? No matter how steep the mountain was, it should not be too difficult for martial artists. It should not be so easy, otherwise, the people here were not fools, how could they not have thought of it? He observed for a while, and saw that the interval between the appearance of the rolling stones was not fixed. Sometimes, one would appear every 3 minutes, and sometimes it would be as long as 10 minutes. There was no pattern. Ling Han decided to give it a try. Since he had already come here, how could he give up without trying? He took a cloak to cover his head, and let the milk babies and perverted pig enter the essence-nourishing gourd, and then walked forward. After walking into the crowd, Ling Han found that these people were actually forming a team. A mystic-seeking expert leading the team, now one person short, requires the cultivation of the enlightening realm. A double mystic-seeking expert leading the team, recruiting one person, the requirement is proficient in formations, the realm can be lowered appropriately, starting from extreme bone. A team of 8 enlightening realm, the leader is a 2-star genius, recruiting 2 more enlightening realm members. Many people were shouting, many were observing, and some were discussing. It was a very lively scene. Ling Han was a little embarrassed. What was going on? Friend, what's going on? He asked the person beside him with a smile. Are you blind? Can't you see for yourself? The person was very impatient, pointing forward. Ling Han frowned, but he did not say anything. He walked to the beginning of the mountain path. Logically speaking, with so many rolling stones constantly crashing down, this place should be full of stones, but in fact, there was nothing here. The rolling stones suddenly disappeared after reaching this position. There was a stone tablet erected there, introducing the way to go up the mountain. It turned out that to go up the mountain, one needed to ride a transportation tool, like a wooden raft, which could slide on the mountain path, and there were weapons on the wooden raft, which could destroy the impact of the rolling stones. A wooden raft could only carry 10 people at most, and the power of the wooden raft's weapons depended on the combined strength of the crew. Reading on the phone is more refreshing. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.